Folks, the rise of digital marketing, I would suggest to you, has been nothing short of meteoric. If you don't know that, you shouldn't be in this room today. But how and to what extent has it fundamentally changed the relationship between consumer and brands? Do we over-amplify this whole process? So let me bring on three speakers, and we're going to interrogate this. Again, if you want to ask some questions in that respect, hashtag Digital Edge 2014. Helene, Lindsay is the Director of Strategy and Marketing at New Media Publishing. So you're going to go up.
I know, and down.
And you're going to go down.
Queen.
Thank you very much.
I'm in very high shoes, everyone. Feel sorry for me.
Okay, and Helene, if you could just do it again, we'd appreciate that.
Funny.
Thank you very much. And fuck off, Jeremy, doesn't work very nicely. Adrian Hewlett, ladies and gentlemen, Chief Executive Officer of the newly christened Publicis-Machine.
Where would you like me, Jeremy?
Wherever you want.
Next to Helene?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, you just look like an absolute duss walking around there, but it's fine. Okay, but you did it well.
Thank you.
Let's see if he can do this slightly better with the walk of shame. Here is Chris Gotz, ladies and gentlemen, the highly awarded Executive Creative Director of the superb agency Ogilvy, Cape Town. So Chris, you can sit there, or you can squeeze up here, or you can sit in the middle. I don't actually care. Maybe you should just sit there, feel a bit more comfortable. Okay, that's fine. Please don't do that, because I'll just put another picture of me up on a clamshell. I'll never live that down, really. I've been called to a disciplinary hearing at the office a little bit later. Chris Gotz, why has digital made such an impact, do you think, first of all?
Oh, God, for God's sake, Jeremy. I think that digital has introduced a new contract between consumers and brands, and I think that there's all sorts of reasons for that. I think that the immediacy of being able to communicate directly with brands and brands being able to communicate directly with the people out there has made brands super aware of what they do and very self-conscious about how they do it. And I think that a lot of today's conversation actually is the result of this new relationship. So I think that brands are behaving in a much more self-conscious way than ever before. And I think that one of those self-conscious behaviors is behaving like a good corporate citizen and trying to do good. And that's a little bit of a cynical view, but it is also a very good way of getting to people to think differently about the way that you do it. But I think that, if you make a mistake, or if you do something positive, obviously, as we all know, that's magnified incredibly quickly and incredibly fast. In fact, Sainsbury's this afternoon put up a poster on the outside of their store asking everyone to get customers to spend an extra 50 pence in store today, and thereby hitting the targets for the month. So that was an internal comms poster which they put on the outside of a Sainsbury's store in a high street earlier today, and the thing's just gone viral. It's like trending on the web. So, and 10 years ago, someone would have put up that poster and just taken it down straight away, and no one would have known about it. So,
but part of that whole debate is you've got to be able to think quickly and nimbly in that respect. Not all brands do that.
Yeah, I think very few brands do that. Yeah.
Helene, you make the point, or you rammed the point home backstage a little earlier. You said, Jeremy, ask me this. I shall.
I said, Jeremy, don't say, may I suggest?
It's not a channel, but a way of thinking. Again, I think we all understand what you're trying to say, but it's in order to get brands to think that it's a way of thinking and not just another of many choices.
I think it's self-evident. I mean, it's much what Chris said and what we were saying earlier. We know digital has changed things. We know that that corporate should be good corporate citizens. We know these things. I think the problem is between the promise and the delivery, and that's what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of corporates who, I think to a certain degree or extent, embrace the digital channel. But I think the problem is that it's not a channel, and it is it's a way of thinking. So talking about being nimble and being quick, talking about how people respond. I don't think there is an altruistic brand that's called a charity, and even then there's a commercial sense to it. But I think that what digital has done is that it's forced brands to be more transparent. It has removed the diplomatic immunity from behaving with impunity whilst pretending that they're doing the good things. And it comes down to standing in a queue at a bank, having their broadcast message pummeled at you at like 25 decibels, telling you how much they care about you, but they're screwing you over in the queue in front of you. You know, it comes down to something as small as that. It comes down to what they say when they're at their board meetings versus how it drills down all the way down to their service level. So I think
Adrian, I get what Helene's saying, but is she not over-amplifying it slightly? I mean, the reality is, you know, you can stand in a bank queue, not Nedbank, and you can you can tweet as much as you want about the poor service that you're getting, but it's not going to drive people away from the brand. People are not going to be majorly disaffected by the brand because of that. Do we not perhaps over-articulate its influence sometimes?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, there's a risk if you choose to ignore what people are saying about you, and I think everybody's made the point that it provides a very direct means for consumers to communicate with your brand. So we know that. But I do think that brands sometimes find themselves in a trap where they listen to too much. I think Pepe mentioned earlier about the brand identifying what it stands for, and then going out and doing stuff. You know, take the Coca-Cola example that Justin mentioned. I wonder, back in the 40s, I think it was, whether Coca-Cola would have run with that if they'd listened to the general public. Because I'm fairly certain that conservative public wouldn't have agreed with that piece of communication. So I think brands need to take a bit of a view on the balance and say sometimes, to quote Richard Mulholland, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And I don't need to listen to everybody. So I think you've got to try to find that balance.
Chris Gotz, how do you find the balance then in that respect?
I do think it's quite harrowing, certainly from my point of view as a creative director who's working very closely with my clients. When you push a piece of work out there, especially a piece of electronic work like a big piece of television, you get immediate feedback. And of course, everyone's listening to that feedback on the agency side and on the client side. And I've seen lots of overreaction to...
So you're spooked by 10 bad tweets, in other words?
Absolutely, and I think that any good piece of communication is necessarily polarizing because you're probably taking a stand or having some sort of a view. So, you know, the negatives and the positives are probably a sign that you're doing your job correctly. So I agree. I think that sometimes we do... And I think that also we know enough now to know that if someone is going to get onto social media and say things, they're more inclined to be negative than be positive. So you're probably getting a disproportionate amount of people commenting on your advertising in a negative way.
So what do brands do? Do they simply filter out the noise then?
No, I think that certainly
You're not
I
going
don't
to change
think
an entire campaign based on
No. But I certainly have experienced clients feeling very uncomfortable with certainly with initial negative criticism about an ad that comes on. And the funny thing is that, you know, that tends to self-correct. So, you know, after a while you get a completely different view coming out. So I think you have to be careful not to react straight away to that stuff.
Having said that, Adrian, back to you. What can it do that other mediums can't do? What's the joy? What's the beauty? What's the magic in this respect?
Tough one. I suppose that, look, there are a number of things it can do. I mean, to weave a thought in, one thing is, okay, 20 years of democracy in South Africa. 20 years ago, many of us didn't have access to many of the brands that we do today. And for the fortunate few who could go overseas, you know, you have all your friends asking you to buy product and bring stuff back. That's not the case anymore. And I think, you know, from a content perspective, you know, we live in this global community. Everything is accessible. We have access to all sorts of information. The latest series that have aired in the States, you know, it's a global village, and it applies to the brands that we have access to. So on the one hand, it can give us access to this global community. But what I find equally interesting is the dichotomy that on the other side, it also allows us to create hyper-local communities. I'm a massive fan of craft beer, and I think there's probably not many people here who haven't been to one of the many craft markets that are popping up. And those are all, you know, largely driven by the digital world, allowing these small entrepreneurs to build businesses and to attract small communities to their businesses. So to make a plug for one particular mobile app, I think SnapScan is fantastic. You know, SnapScan is a mobile payment gateway developed in Stellenbosch, I believe, and that's allowing these small entrepreneurs to go and facilitate payment in what is a very community-based business environment, and that's fantastic.
So, Helene, what sort of strategy then should smaller brands be adopting in that respect, particularly to pick up on Adrian's point, if they are relating or trying to reach that smaller, more niched, more specialist community. I mean, is there a difference in what they're doing compared to a kind of a bigger brand strategy?
I think they have the ability to be more honest and to be more real and not to have
Surely all brands should be honest and real.
Well, Jeremy, you're contradicting what you said earlier, so let's just go here with the small brands. I think if you are an entrepreneur, you're someone new or young, you can, and you can find, so we know that, so what I specialize in at the moment is content marketing. What is it all about? It's about finding like-minded communities. That's what Red Bull is about. It's about what all of the brands that have done something really amazing is when it's a small community of like-minded people built around a theme that they care about, regardless, it could be motorbike racing, it could be sailing small dinghies. So the smaller, what Adrian's talking about with the craft beers is a great example because you find people who are really interested in it and you can pinpoint and target them and you can reach their communities. So your ability to, and Chris, I can't believe you used the word viral, but your ability to viralize your brand is that much more extensive.
You could also use big data to find them.
You could use big data to go viral, and I say, bring in a kitten. A kitten always rocks. But they've got that ability, and they can also challenge the big brands, and I think people are wanting the small champion to challenge the big brands as well.
But Chris Gotz, it's an awful amount of effort to engage with a small community, isn't it?
I think that if you hold that view, then you don't have a future in marketing because I think we're going to find
Mercifully,
ourselves...
I'm not in marketing. Yeah.
Well, you kind of are. At the moment, anyway. I think that micro-communities are going to become a huge part of what we do as advertising people. I think that niche marketing is becoming ever more possible, obviously, because we know who we're speaking to a lot of the time and we've got the data. And that's really, I know big data got trashed this morning, and I'm always the first to jump in there. But that's the one thing that data will do for us. It will allow us to identify the people who we need to talk to. I think in 10 years' time, we'll kind of look at ourselves and go, good God, we actually spent millions and millions of rand making a television commercial, putting it on television, and then hoping that people would see it. I think that that's going to seem like a waste of money to us in 10 to 15 years' time when you can talk to individuals.
So
if you need to sell 1,000 luxury cars to 1,000 people, you'll go out and you'll find those 1,000 people and you'll focus on 5,000 of them and sell the cars.
So the method then, it's changed from a broadcast method to perhaps more of a dialogue with that smaller niched community. Strategically and creatively and tonally, does it change in any respect?
I don't think so.
Or are you applying the same broad brand communication principles?
I think it makes creativity much more exciting when you're much more specific about who you're speaking to. So I think that the future is very exciting. I think that obviously there's going to be a bit of a lag. I think that the mass media in this country are particularly strong, obviously radio and television, and that will remain the case for some time. And I don't think broadcast media is not going to go away. It's just going to switch screens. So we'll still have to find a way of using film and using our own films to talk to people. But I think that the numbers guys and the maths guys are entering our industry in a big way, and I think that they're going to have a huge difference. They're going to identify, as Adrian said, communities for us that we were never able to talk to before.
So, Adrian,
one comment to
certainly,
that?
Yeah.
Just the irony of it is, and we both made the point, but the community press has been around for years. And
we've often tended to dismiss it.
And dismiss it, yet they were talking to communities throughout their history. So maybe it's just an evolution of that.
Okay, just a final question to the three of you as we wrap up and I bring Tom Kelly on. In this whole dynamic, and Helene, let me start with you, it's important then to have an understanding with the consumer and to also collaborate with that consumer. What's the collaboration model? What should you be doing in terms of promoting that relationship?
I don't think it's a blanket answer. You raised the question earlier, and we were talking about micro communities and the difference between corporates and small entrepreneurs. I don't think it's a blanket. I think collaboration, to what you were saying, Adrian, no, a large corporate cannot just respond, especially not to the naysayers and the trolls. You hear it and you shun it. But I think there needs to be a certain element at that stage of listening to a large, massive dissent, of people starting to wrangle about things. And I think the bank example, not Nedbank, obviously, but we don't have an option. We don't have an option. But with the smaller guys, I think you can mold your product using input from the people you can see. You can use your data to monitor your product sample, the normal marketing, but then you can also hear their input, because often they have got different angles that you haven't considered.
Okay, panel nil, Nedbank 2 in this respect. Folks, just very quickly, in conclusion, just some closing remarks from all of you. Chris Gotz, the question I want to put to you is, what is the landscape going to look like in 5 years from now? But it's a spurious question because we just don't know that. What's the landscape going to look like in the next 18 months? In other words, how radically, how quickly is this changing, and how does an audience of marketers specifically need to respond to that?
Over the next 18 months, I can't imagine anything's going to be particularly different from now.
But I see the time frames have telescoped.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a new social media platform launched yesterday called LO. There's already comment that it's going to be the big Facebook killer.
This is a French, it's LO, it's a French...
LO.
It's anti-Facebook.
Is it Facebook?
It's anti-Facebook.
Anti-Facebook.
It's anti-Facebook because they don't carry any advertising, they don't allow brands to communicate with anybody. Now, if people migrate to that, I think that probably in the next sort of decade or so, I think progressively a lot of our media is going to be social. So if we want to talk to people, we've probably got to be on those platforms. Now, if social media platforms are coming up and they don't allow advertising, we're going to have to rethink the whole model. I think that things can change very quickly and very suddenly and very unpredictably.
Helene, last word from you?
No, Adrian needs the last word because...
I'll get the last word after you, then I get the last word.
Sweet Jesus,
I
just
want
make
to
up your minds.
I'm a token female, by the way. On what, Jeremy?
It's been a long day. It really has been. I'm giving you the canvas. I'm saying some words of wisdom to close the debate. All you've given me so far are shoes and kittens.
It's popular. Adrian, you can close the debate.
Okay, so I'll put a question out there. So when Arthur pulled out his four or five handsets this morning, we dove
his old party trick.
Yeah, his old party trick. We dove into the subject of big data, and I'll say it, to my disappointment, we didn't really leave that discussion. What I would be interested to have heard more about today, in that particular panel, was how do we effectively use these handsets and these devices to create amazing projects and campaigns that are linked to these big ideas? I think Fran mentioned the idea of turning this into a broadcast radio device. Give us more of those.
Yep.
I mean, I think the problem with mobile, and I've mentioned this for a few years now, is that yes, you're right, it gives us a connectivity to the audience, but that little screen doesn't give us much more. And to create the type of communication that's really going to be impactful is a massive challenge. So we've got the connectivity to these people, but how do we really create effective communication? And that one little story about India, great. We need to try and unpack more of those opportunities. Otherwise, we'll stay talking about data for eons to come.
Helene?
I want to say something philosophical, which I know you'll roll your eyes at, but yes, the focus on the handsets, the focus on feature versus smart, and the focus on the devices and the social platforms, we keep on polarizing it between brands, which we have to because there's a commercial need, and consumers. And we need the consumers to make the commercials good. The point for me is always, and it comes down to Levuso, who was saying earlier, and I know that you had about social good, but I think it is about communication. And for me, the biggest thing is the humanization of brands. I don't mean that you suddenly start becoming a human being. I mean that you respect the fact that you're on a social platform and you treat it with, you are playing in other people's space. You are in their sandpit. So treat it with care and respect, regardless of if you're on the top of a pinhead or using a feature phone. And I think that's important.
Panel members, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.